What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
My name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and we are in week 2 of this identity series that we've been doing. And today we're talking about formation, confirmation, sanctification. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But we also got to celebrate Confirmation Sunday.
Right.
So it fits well there. I see what you did there, Dave. So clever. But we'll get into it. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. All right, Dave. So normally we have this space of banter here where we kind of talk about weeks. I want to throw a little curveball at you today.
Oh, no.
I just thought it might be fun to let people get to know us some in a little bit of a different way. I want you to give me your top 3 fast food restaurants. If you're on the road or something and you have to stop, where are the top 3 places you're going?
It's pretty easy. Chick-fil-A, if it's available.
Yeah.
Burger King would be second. I like Burger King hamburgers.
That's interesting.
And Taco Bell.
Taco Bell.
Those would be the 3. I do not like McDonald's.
Okay.
Avoid that.
What about the breakfast?
For breakfast, same.
Okay. That's cool.
Well, I not Burger King for breakfast. Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell's got some nice burritos, breakfast burritos.
Okay. I'm not sure I've actually had Taco Bell breakfast ever.
Maybe that would be a stop in a Waffle House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it kind of depends on, what would you classify? Is Chipotle fast food?
It's fast food adjacent.
Ish.
Yeah.
Because Chipotle would be one of mine if it was.
Yeah.
But Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I can do a McDonald's, but I would prefer a Wendy's, I think, over a McDonald's. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to try something different.
Yeah. I wanted to note that this is the first time we have done a podcast here in the studio.
Yeah.
In probably 5 or 6 weeks.
It's very weird. Has been such a rhythm over the last couple of years because we're almost at episode 100, so we've almost been doing this close to 2 years. And it's been wow, I as I came in and sat down and said, it's been a while since I've sat in this seat.
We've done it together.
Right.
I've done some, but without you. So it's good to have,
it's good that the sign now matches the people sitting.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, Dave, why don't we jump into it?
Yeah.
Formation, confirmation, sanctification, all part of this
so,
identity.
This series that it's, decided back, I think, in November, December to do, and it just started looking at how things were going to line up. And it just worked out very well because even though it wasn't part of the series, Beth's sermon that we had on the first Sunday of the year really was a good prelude into this series. But we're kind of looking at our identity as Christ followers. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at call, and we looked at the first week, and some of the 3 words that I would come out of there were our uniqueness, because we're all unique, we're all beloved, we're all loved by God, but we all each have a call, and so that's kind of where we started, at least in the preaching that I've done.
Yep.
And then I knew as we were doing the schedule that this was going to be confirmation. And so I think it was really nice in our growth as Christian individuals, that there is this part that we would call formation or spiritual formation. Formation, all these words would be words that we might know from, outside in the world.
Right.
But they have a unique meaning within the church. And so when we talk about Christian formation within the church, many times we sort of pigeonhole it into small group Bible study, those kinds of things. Yeah. And what I really hope to do, we had limited time yesterday because of confirmation, which we'll get to in a second, is really say that formation is more than just taking a Bible study and learning stuff. That's part of it, and that's important. But it also involves, what we do, how we live, what our behavior is, how we live, and then, how we interact with others people. And so, one way of looking at it in a maybe simple definitions would be, right thinking, right action, and sort of right behavior. Another, using $10 kind of seminary words, would be orthodoxy orthopraxy, putting it into practice, and then orthopathy. And so, I used an example, and I think a good example, because we just had a team that went down Saturday to the homeless shelter and brought some stuff down in downtown Atlanta, worked with them. They do a great job. But those are people, those are people that are all students of the Bible, all involved in Sunday school and small groups and stuff like that. But those are people that are also living out their lives and living out the gospel by putting things into practice.
Right.
And so, and then they also, I think, part of what draws them into it is just their compassion and their empathy towards the homeless.
Yeah.
And so we could talk about many, many different ministry areas there, but that's the way it works.
And if you talk to like Craig, for instance, he's one of the he's the leader of the homeless ministry.
Yeah.
He always talks about it being a ministry of presence, and because he understands that it takes that relationship for a lot of these people to trust, because there's so many other people who are trying to get them to move or to get them to pick up, and leave everything they've got or whatever. So for him, there's a lot of that trust built into it. So it's that practice that you're talking about. And I just think that's a cool part of it.
And so as we're thinking about growing as Christians, and as thinking about how we are formed and being formed into being more Christ-like, it really takes all three of those things. And one thing I pointed out yesterday, but I'll say it here again, is that lots of times you can have right belief and know this is the right thing to do and then actually do it, but really your heart hasn't changed yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dutiful servanthood, and so allowing Christ to sort of melt our hearts in such a way that, we have developed the empathy or the reason why we are doing that,
Right.
Another example I could give would be like, sometimes we say the word, I'm sorry, but it's really not in the heart. We're not really sorry, but we have said the right words, and we might have already had the right thinking to know this is something that I've said.
Right.
So changing our attitude towards others. And so sometimes that third one is the hardest for us to get to in our Christian formation.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, as I was thinking about some of the stuff that I was going to say, because there was this part of the service that I was going to come, but I know we got more of the sermon to talk about.
Yeah.
But I found that during the sermon, you and me had a lot of similar things that we wanted to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, now I can't say that. I was like, we were pretty in sync, actually. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was the confirmation, because that is a word that we use particularly within the church, within, I think, most Protestant churches, and certainly the Roman Catholics. It's actually one of the sacraments in the Roman Catholic Church. It is not that for us. We have two sacraments, baptism and communion.
Right.
But that this time in a young person's life when they reach the age where they're really beginning to make adult decisions.
Yeah.
And so what has been formed is now being confirmed.
Correct.
We're being conformed into the image of Jesus, but it's that idea of like, this is a marker that we're putting down, and we did it. I thought it was a beautiful day yesterday with all the things we did for the confirmants. It's a big deal.
It is.
I mean, they went through how many weeks? With 18 weeks or something?
15.
15 week study with you, plus all those kids are heavily involved in the church, in service, but also, in Sunday school and in youth group and that sort of thing. So all the stuff that's been formed in them, now we're getting to the part that as the church, we say to them, we're celebrating that as we confirm you on this Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love, especially with this group, that they are already involved and getting more involved. Even yesterday, I heard little Ella Dondero, one of the confirmands, was talking to Nicole and Connie about how to plug in with the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I love that it's like this kind of idea of, passing on what they've learned now to this younger generation.
Right.
And, and that's something we talked about, is just like, as you now taking your faith in your own hands, it's as a member, we say that we're all going to use our gifts, presence, tithe, all that stuff. And I was like, and this is your turn to do that.
By the way, that got said and repeated like 6 or 7 times in the service.
Yeah.
That was a constant thing.
It was almost a tongue twister.
Prayers, presence, gifts, service, witness, which is good. We all need to remember that.
That's right.
But really, in thinking about orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthopathy, really that is sort of summarized. And if we do those things, prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness, we are making progress towards fulfilling that kind of formation.
Absolutely.
And I think, one of the things that I think got stressed yesterday, and I tried to stress, is that it is an ongoing organic process, our Christian journey throughout our entire life.
Yeah.
And so it's not, confirmation is not graduation,
right.
and then you're done.
Yeah.
It is ongoing. We're always learning. We're always becoming, more Christ-like, hopefully, in the way that we
Yeah,
are
and I liked how you said that it was a mile marker. Is that it feels kind of like a bit of a graduation light, but it's not a finish line. And I love that, and I think that's even a message to the broad congregation, or all of us as Christians, is that the way you grew up in faith isn't the way that your faith is always going to be lived out, and the circumstances you had, like in youth group. Just because your next 10 years of Christianity might not look like the youth group doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means it's different. It's how you're living your Christian life as a 20-something, and then how you're living it as maybe a young adult or a young family, or you know what I mean? And it just changes and shifts, and it's cool to watch the seasons. I'm not too far down that road, I don't think. I'm about to I'll hit 40 this year, at the end of this year. But I've seen my Christian journey change several times.
And you're going to have probably some deep experiences at different times in your life. And so sometimes you look back in confirmation and think, well, I didn't really know anything now. Now I've done that. And so I think we need to give grace to ourselves that, as you're learning to walk, what do? You crawl first, you develop those muscles, then you toddle, and then you learn to walk and run, and so you don't look back and say, oh man, I was really terrible back then when, I was learning to toddle because I kept falling down all the time. Well, that's just, it's part of the growth. By the way, on the markers thing, I wanted to say this. Did you notice I had that mile marker as one of the images? Did you notice anything about that?
No, I only noticed it was like mile 8.
I'm so glad.
Something like that.
Yeah, it did say 8 mile.
Oh,
and so
Detroit, was that your hidden your root thing?
Any M&M fans? No, and I have some resources that I go to get these sort of stock photos, and that was the best one that I could find.
Okay.
And it's like I kept looking for others because I'm going like, Nick Yoder and Sarah and all those people. There's going to be people in the congregation going to say, "Is this an M&M thing?" But no, that was.
You know what? You should have said no. It was a hidden way that I was rooting for Detroit yesterday because they ended up winning.
Yeah.
Good old 8 Mile, but oh, that's good. That's good.
So anyway, I think you're right on with all of that. It is, you are going to have, and I've had people that maybe went through confirmation, and maybe you were a youth group kid, but then fell away for a long time, and then came back to the church, and they sometimes have a tendency to discount what happened when they were younger.
Yeah.
And say, well, I didn't. But I think we've got to give ourselves more grace and give God more credit than that.
Yeah.
It's part of that God's prevenient grace. We'll talk about sanctifying grace in a second.
Yeah.
I got one more thing I want to say about confirmation, though. But that it is all part of the journey of life. And those seeds were planted, and maybe they lay dormant for a while, but they were there.
Yeah.
And so. Sometimes we just have to trust God and the process of growing as we have more experiences and other things, and how we believe, what we believe, those things can change. I do not believe, my theology has changed somewhat over the years. I'd like to think that it's been fairly consistent for a good while now, but as a young person or a young adult, some things that I believed and believed pretty young, I've learned, and I think I've just learned to have more grace about some things with people. I used to be a lot more legalistic with my things. But one thing I mentioned yesterday is that we have this thing called confirmation. I do think we need to look at ways of acknowledging markers that people are going through in other parts of their life as they grow in adults. The Disciple Bible Study, it's we've done it here.
Yeah.
We don't have one currently going now, but I remember particularly in the early days, there was a big deal as you went through this 34-week thing. At the end, there was kind of a graduation. You got a certificate and a little pin that you could wear.
Right.
And so there was part of it I thought, well, that's a little cheesy, but I as I think on it, I think it was really a good thing to affirm, hey, you reached this marker. You've done something pretty significant here. I was thinking about, and I know we've got some plans that are being worked on to do international mission trip, and so later this year.
Right.
And so I think the people that go on a mission trip for the first time or the fifth time or whatever, some way of acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Because that is another marker in a person's life. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think it. Not that everybody gets a trophy and everybody gets an award every time they do something, but I think it's a good thing to encourage people and acknowledge, hey, you've done this significant spiritual thing in your life.
Yeah.
And we like to say congratulations.
Yeah. It's almost like the merit badge system with the Boy Scouts and stuff like that, how they do certain things and work on. And, I think in a lot of ways, I know they have the sash and it shows off, but a lot of ways it just shows that you're working on a for completion's sake. Yeah, I guess. And trying to figure out, okay, what are some things that I can continue to do to continue to grow my faith? And whether it's a long class or an international mission trip or something like that, I think sometimes we get so stuck in our ways of like, this is my linear path of Christianity, that maybe we don't try to explore some of these other things. And, if I didn't try to do an international mission trip, I don't know that I'd ever been called to, or I would have recognized my call to youth ministry for a much longer time, and I think sometimes when we put ourselves in situations that maybe aren't necessarily a predictable outcome is the time that God shows himself to us the most. So we're putting ourselves in a space of, I don't know that I can do a 30-week class, but maybe he honors the fact that you sacrificed some to do this 34-week class. You know what I mean? Like,
I just think it's something for us to think about and acknowledge, not to do that. And I don't think that, the people that have gone through that would be the motivation for them doing is, hey, I'm going to get a medal, a badge or that. But I just think it's good for the church to do that.
Sure.
I think it's one of the ways that we affirm and encourage one another.
Yeah. And that's, again, that speaks so well to what I told the confirmands the week before. I know we're going to get to confirmation, but it was just such a good time because I was just letting them know that, when we're not in community, we're going to have a much higher tendency to fall away.
Right.
And
I think you see that in that scripture, and it's just, I put up that slide of the deserted island thing because I did have that question one time, can you be saved if you were marooned by yourself on a desert island somewhere?
Yep.
And I think the answer, of course, is yes. God's grace reaches us wherever we are. But I think, first of all, that's going to be really rare. Yeah.
Hopefully you don't end up on a desert island.
And so maybe there are other scenarios we could talk about where a person may have to live a more isolated life and outside of community more than they would like. But for most of us, we do have the choice to be in community some way. And particularly with all the online stuff we can do, there's a whole community there too. And I do really think that practicing your faith is very hard outside the community to really be formed the way that God wants us to be in sanctification, because we have to bump elbows with people.
Yeah.
We have to, and not just for the encouragement, but I think also sometimes for the conflict and things that come along. I think God has a way of working through those things to teach us how to live at peace with one another and how to forgive one another. We are to forgive as we have been forgiven. Well, if we're not in relationship with people, that's going to be something we're not going to be able to do. But just by the nature of living life, things are going to happen. Misunderstandings are going to take place. People are going to be hurt. So we get to learn how to practice forgiveness and to accept forgiveness ourselves. and how to reach a way of living in our lifestyle of living that is more peacemaking.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, it kind of reminded me of a story from my youth days. And I was so thankful I was in community. We used to not only did we gather on Sundays, but some of us would gather for breakfast and talk a little more in depth through devotion and stuff like that. And I remember one time we were sitting, it was at the old family traditions. If you people who might be from Hickory Flat for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. But I remember going in there one time, and I was very excited about my faith, and I was very, I was pretty new into it. But this was the time of AOL chat rooms when you would just drop into a chat room and chat with random people. And I remember I went into it one time and I was like, I'm going to talk about my faith. Mm-hmm. And, some internet troll or whatever just destroyed me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I went in there and I was talking to the youth group and Craig about it, who was the youth pastor at the time. And, there was just some accountability into but maybe they just need, to talk through how I was feeling about being torn apart as a teenager, but then also how to extend that grace. There was so much that I wouldn't have learned in that space if I didn't have a safe space to talk with people, to be in that community together. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
So, anything else about confirmation? I mean, there's a lot to celebrate there. We could probably sit here and talk 30 minutes about the confirmation service, and I think we sort of touched on why we do it. But anything to add about it? It was such a great day. You did such a great job. But I really appreciated the people that put on the banquet for those families afterwards, and there were several gifts that they received. I mean, the church gave them a gift, but several individuals and Sunday school class also got special gifts. And I just love it that we can do that for the young people in our church.
Yeah, I can tell you, it meant, although a lot of the day meant a lot to me, as the person who was teaching the class. There was some stuff that...
but also as a parent.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And it was cool to be able to do the part of the service that I was in charge of, but then also to be able to trust other people to come beside and make the day special for the kids. I stopped by your office and thanked you for doing a lot of work on prepping the service, and then to go from there and to see what Connie, Teresa, Jeannie, and several others who brought food and just made the banquet so special for those families and friends, and even extra people who kind of stopped in because they knew some of the kids, so they wanted to just say thanks. We're get some food while you're here, so they were able to kind of sit down. It was cool. And then like you said, I had a gift for the kids from the church, but then a couple other groups, the Stitch and Share. Connie brought some of the blankets from them that they wanted to give to the kids, and some cards, and then the Wildflowers class as well popped in with it was just cool to see the church come around those 4 girls and say hey, we're really proud that you've reached this milestone. We want to celebrate you a little bit. And and they didn't want any big, I was maybe they'll want to sit and talk. And they're I just want to go around to give the gifts and say something individually to each kid or whatever. And that was cool, and it just meant a lot to me. So thank you to anybody who helped with the day, whether you cleaned a dish or brought a dish or we're just there taking extra pictures. I got some other people who were sent some pictures around. So thank you guys so much. It was a great day. And I could speak on behalf of the 4 girls that they felt very special. And for those that don't know, they told me at the end of our last class, can we shave your head or something that we've done this? And I was no, you cannot. And they're come out pie you. And I was you know what? I will willingly do a pie thing if you all will join in. And they're okay. So our last thing we did as a class is we sat around a circle table like this and did a random pie game where somebody would turn around and they would say stop after we'd slap or something like that. So about 3 or 4 of us got pie in our face.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures on
But I'll tell you one of the funniest ones though is when Riley's the one who won. She was the last girl standing. But I was do you want to get pie? And she goes, yeah. So I put up the plate and I went, Nicole, do you want to pie your daughter? And she was like, yes. Seeing Nicole that excited to pie somebody was a highlight of the day for me.
Well, I do feel really strongly about, just what a great class it was. All 4 of those young women are outstanding, and they all come from 4 fantastic, very involved families in our church. And so it's going to be interesting now to watch them grow up together. In that class, and there's others in our youth group as well. That are different ages, but to watch them develop and see how God uses them as they now, they're not in high school yet. They're
7th graders.
7th graders, yeah, they're pretty. But now they've got 5 more years here at the church. To develop and grow in the community and have the influence that they will have. So
I was talking to somebody about that. The youth group is awesome right now, and they got a bunch of kids who are just dabbling in leadership opportunities and stuff like that. But I tell you, there's about 2 or 3 classes coming up into that youth group here in the next couple of years too that are all a bunch of little leaders, which could prove challenging at times because you get a bunch of leaders in a spot and everybody wants to lead. But with the right grooming and small group and stuff, that youth group's going to be really cool for a while.
And so that's a good place for us to lead into the last word that we talked about was sanctification. It wasn't the first time that we talked about, or I've talked about sanctification in the sermon. It won't
be the last.
It won't be the last time. And so hopefully it's a word that we're kind of understanding as well as having a definition to. But I wanted to stress that because, there are steps on this journey. And all of this process is a process of sanctification. Not being holier now, sometimes we think of sanctimonious.
Yes.
But we are, sanctify means to set apart for God. So, we are growing up and maturing as Christians, and that is all the journey of sanctification. And, thinking back to confirmation, I have had over the years, and, I've in my 28th year, of ministry now. So, and had many confirmation classes. And there have been some, and I'm not meaning to sound harsh, I pray for these people, I love these people, but there have been some that families would actually call and say, what are y'all doing confirmation? They would be members, but not maybe involved, and would really get their kids for confirmation because of maybe their background or something, that confirmation was important for them to go through. And so the kids would come to the class to be confirmed in the church. And then on Confirmation Sunday, I would literally, at the luncheon or banquet or whatever we had, I would literally be introducing them to the youth pastor and saying, this is our youth pastor, now we really want you to get involved in a youth group. And but we would never see them again.
Right.
Because they kind of looked at it as graduation, as a thing to check off, and so in sanctification, there isn't a thing you check off. You continue to grow. And so I don't know if that makes the sense that I want it to make, but I think you get the point that we continue on this journey. It is organic and it is lifelong. And, we are being made more like Christ in every step, and there are setbacks along the way, certainly. But there's also other deep times of sacred understanding, and I'm excited for those kids, but I'm excited for our church too. I get the sense just this year in worship, there's just been a life about it, and lightness about it, and holiness about it. It's pretty exciting for me as pastor.
Absolutely. It is. It's been an exciting year so far, and we're going to keep it up. We're going to keep it moving, and then keep looking to God to help guide our steps and to make this. I know the conference is pushing this, as Beth said on the time that she preached a couple weeks ago, when she said, that we're claiming this a year of joy and a year of celebration, and I think we should model that, and find that joy. And our mission statement is hope, joy, all that good stuff. So
empowering hope, joy, and purpose.
That's right.
So that's what the world needs. So that doing that. So we'll continue next week with week 3. be praying for you. I know we've actually had conversations about this in prior podcasts, but your mother went through the transplant surgery.
Yep.
And I know that you're headed to Nashville to take her up there for a checkup.
Yep, just a checkup.
So,
hopefully everything's good, but some travel mercies would be great.
Yeah, we'll be praying for you, and look forward to doing this again next week.
That's right. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
All right, God bless everybody.